Hello, everyone. What I'm going to be covering today is going to be quite probably a bombshell. I'm going to reveal the evidence of an actual CIA conspiracy, violation of Title 18 U.S. Code, uh, with the details, multiple felonies that the CIA committed, and exactly the conspirators involved. As you all know, the CIA has been getting away with committing felonies and criminal acts, including inside the United States, for decades. And we are in talks now and working towards reform of the CIA. And my primary recommendation is to remove the National Clandestine Service or the Directorate of Operations from the CIA, make it its own separate agency. The CIA has proved itself over and over not just to be grossly corrupt, but also grossly incompetent in the coups that it has done. And the CIA has been responsible for the death of about 7 million people. So the National Clandestine Center, the CIA does not deserve for that to be there. They have proven that they cannot use it appropriately, and the National Clandestine Center needs to be its own center with separate oversight. So I want to show you a conspiracy that I witnessed personally, and I think the American public needs to know about, and they need to know how the CIA does this and how they've gotten away with it. So let's jump right into it. Let's first start by the definition of conspiracy. I was taught this in the Law Enforcement Academy. The definition of a conspiracy is very important. A federal conspiracy is a criminal offense that occurs when two or more people agree to commit a crime and then take action to carry out the agreement. The primary federal statute for conspiracy is Title 18 U.S. Code 371. To convict someone of conspiracy, the government must prove the following elements, and each one of these has got to be present. At least two people agreed to commit a crime. The defendant intentionally joined the agreement, and one of the conspirators took an action to further that agreement. The government consider a number of factors when trying to prove conspiracy, including, and this time it's conspiracy by the CIA. The government must consider a number of factors. One, the defendant's words or actions, the defendant's presence at the crime scene, the defendant's intent to commit the crime, the defendant's knowledge of the conspiracy's goals. And you'll see me prove all of that. Now, the punishment for a federal conspiracy charge is a fine, usually $250,000, or up to 5 years in prison, or both. If the underlying offense is a misdemeanor, then the punishment for conspiracy cannot exceed the maximum punishment of the misdemeanor. Some examples of federal conspiracy charges include conspiring to defraud the government, conspiring to impede the free exercise of rights. Let me read that one again. Conspiring to impede the free exercise of rights, conspiring to injure an officer. Let me read that one again. Conspiring to injure an officer, and conspiring to aid prisoners of war or enemy aliens. Federal conspiracy cases. Many federal crimes involve conspiracies, which, in addition to the underlying substantive crime, are subject to prosecution. Conspiracy charges are very serious, as they encompass a wide range of conduct and often add layers of complexity to a criminal case. And I'm going to lay that complexity out for you today in pretty clear detail. Conspiracy charges carry heavy penalties, including lengthy prison sentences and large fines, making early engagement of an experienced federal criminal defense attorney critical. If you're a defendant, in this case, the CIA will be the defendant. Conspiracy is a crime separate and distinct from the crime that is the object of the conspiracy. I am going to show you in detail a number of felonies that the CIA committed as part of this conspiracy. For example, you can be charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering under 18 U.S.C. 371 and with money laundering under 18 U.S.C. 1956, depending on the specific crime. So I'm going to go through one by one the felonies that the CIA committed and tried to cover up. The CIA tried to cover up these felonies First, by violating Executive Order 12356, subparagraph 1.6, subparagraph 1.6a. And that is redacting information that is unclassified but reveals criminal activity on the part of the CIA. And several other felonies in conjunction with that. Felony number 1, the poisoning of U.S. citizens, the poisoning of a family with father, mother, and children. Felony number 2, cover up of personal injury to U.S. citizens. Felony number 3, destruction of evidence and cover up of resulting Department of State IG investigation. Again, destruction of evidence, documented contamination of a base residence. And there's going to be several here. Wire fraud, disseminating false information via telephone, CIA cable system, and internal emails. Next felony, document destruction, evidence of the embassy vulnerability, which I've talked about on several interviews. The destruction of the reports of that vulnerability, threatening the officer, me, to drop the report and that evidence of that vulnerability, and the Department of State IG doing a secret investigation, finding out it was worse than even I thought. So document destruction, a very serious case. Contamination of the house that I was ordered to be in, which the CIA knew was contaminated before they put me and my family, which were collateral damage, in this house. And the CIA, and this is where it really gets interesting, the CIA concealed, destroyed, and threatened me regarding an official grievance I filed via cable through the official grievance system, detailing all of these events that happened: the contamination, the poisoning, the break-in, the chemical painted on the ceiling, the cover-up, the removal of documents on the base. All of that was in my detailed grievance, which was blocked, concealed, and there'll be more on that later. Fabrication of a false official grievance by the Office of General Counsel, who produced a grievance under pressure. They produced a grievance that was falsified, one page written in someone else's handwriting in blue ink. My courageous, heroic attorney, Clint Blackman, was there, witnessed this happen. Next, blocking and concealing the official grievance. I mentioned that. Another felony, bribery. The CIA and the Department of Justice broke an official settlement agreement with our family after OGC, Office of General Counsel, had signed that document and it had been approved. The CIA, through Department of Justice, contacted our attorneys and us, and in the case of bribery, ordered us, if we did not take a lower settlement, broke the settlement agreement, and then threatened that if we did not take a lower settlement, they would invoke the state secrets privilege and seal all of the evidence. I want everybody to remember that one. Okay, another felony. The CIA blocked my thrift savings plan retirement funds to try to destroy our family, my family, me, and my career even further. After we lost all of our personal possessions that were contaminated on that base, the CIA blocked my request for disbursement of my thrift savings plan funds so my family could survive. I have the Office of Personnel Management official on tape confirming that the CIA had blocked those funds. And I have the name of the CIA official who did it also on the tape. And I have released that tape on my patreon.com. It's patreon.com/Kevin_ship. I've released that actual recording there. Okay, let's move on. The CIA also destroyed my board-approved, signed credit union hardship loans that I took out so my family could survive as I looked for employment, because I'd resigned from the CIA to fight them and to sue them. Well, once again, I have this on a tape recording right out of the birdie's mouth. If you go to patreon.com/Kevin_ship, SHIPP, you will find this tape recording of the official admitting this, not knowing he was on tape. Now, in the state of Virginia, only one party needs to be privy of a taped conversation. And I knew that, and that's how I taped this. So the CIA blocked, destroyed, literally removed the approved hardship loans that were in the credit union and had been approved. And They removed the loan officer who worked with us and signed and completed those hardship loans. That person disappeared, and you'll hear on the tape the CIA credit union official claiming that the person is not just gone. They're not just gone. They're really gone, and they concealed her whereabouts. Would not say where she went. Another felony: surveilling of U.S. citizens. The security guards on the base should become friends of mine. This is a secret CIA base. Become friends of mine because I supported them, gave them extra training. No one took them seriously till I got there, and I did, because of the sensitivity of this place. They confided in me, two of them, that they had been ordered by the chief of base and by the base commander, a man named Jason Shirley, to surveil our family on the base. And my oldest son was surveilled off the base as well. The security guards actually gave us affidavits to that fact. A felony: surveillance of U.S. citizens on domestic soil. The CIA used another felony. They used a CIA secrecy agreement to conceal their criminal activity, threatening me with breaking my secrecy agreement if I revealed any of this to anyone or wrote about this in any book. And from the company of Shadows, I did put this information in there, all unclassified, all evidence. And the CIA redacted all of it, which, of course, is a felony. I'll talk about that in a bit. Excuse me. There's a lot here. So let's keep going, because no CIA officer's ever done this before. I'm doing it for God and conscience. And I'm doing it for the love of freedom. And so Americans know how the CIA conducts or commits criminal activity. In this case, how the CIA conducted a massive conspiracy to eliminate me after I discovered a vulnerability that they were trying to silence and target and erase me. All right, let's go on. Use of the state secrets privilege to conceal criminal activity and seal evidence. That's a big one. And God willing, if I am brought in the new administration to give advice on reform of the CIA, this will be one of the things I will be addressing, the illegal abuse of the state secrets privilege, specifically by George Tenet, who invoked it 42 times, more than any other CIA director in history, to conceal criminal activity. The CIA invoked the state secrets privilege along with Glenn McTaggart with the Department of Justice, invoked the state secrets privilege merely to conceal all of the evidence that I had gathered, unclassified evidence of their criminal activity. Another felony: the CIA Inspector General. I contacted the CIA Inspector General that is supposed to support employees and look into allegations. The Inspector General gave me the name of a person who didn't exist, in an office that didn't exist, with a phone number that didn't exist. And then later, when I was a program manager for an outside contractor, a former senior CIA IG officer came over to my table, sat down, told me he wanted to apologize deeply for what the CIA IG had done to me. They were ordered, and this came down from George Tenet and Alvin Buzzy Krongard, they were ordered to silence me and erase me because they were terrified the news media was going to find out what was done on that base. So the CIA IG literally targeted an employee for silencing and destruction. That is horrifying, but it happened, and we have evidence. The CIA Office of General Counsel, as I mentioned earlier, falsified a copy of my official grievance to the point where it was ridiculous. One page, someone else's handwriting. Routinely, the CIA violated Executive Order 12356 issued by Ronald Reagan when he was president. Executive Order 12356, Section 1.6a, when they redacted unclassified information from my book, From the Company of Shadows. What they redacted was my family's toxic exposure, their illnesses, even their identities could not be revealed. And From the Company of Shadows, my wife, oldest son, and two youngest children, their identities were blacked out, redacted by the CIA, including the break-ins to our house, the painting of a chemical on the ceiling of that house. All of that was redacted or blacked out by the CIA in violation of this order, Executive Order 12356, which states the CIA cannot redact information because it reveals criminal activity, negligence, or embarrassment. Huge violation. And then the CIA used the state secret privilege to cover up that violation of Executive Order 12356, so no one would find out what they did because the entire case was sealed. And I hope there are attorneys watching this, private national security attorneys watching this, because this is something that you need to know, and this is something that you can use when you understand how the CIA engages in a conspiracy and how they try to cover it up. All right, another felony, targeting a whistleblower. Of course, that would be yours truly, for career, personal, and financial destruction. We have all of the evidence for that. I've got two people on tape stating that was done, that they did that. So we have them on tape. Another felony, lying to Congress. The CIA lied to Congress, specifically my Congressman Frank Wolf, who was tried 7 times to get the CIA to tell him the facts about our case. The CIA's response was, it's a legal matter. You have no jurisdiction over this, and blocked Congressman Frank Wolf from seeing the evidence in our case. Another felony, knowingly poisoning a CIA officer, his wife, and children. When they placed us in a house that they knew was contaminated, the family before us, the former chief of base security, if anybody wants to interview him, the family before us was evacuated because they were deathly ill because of what was in the house. They knew it was contaminated when they put us in there purposely. Now, in any conspiracy, of course, there are conspirators. And I know each and every one of the conspirators involved in this. After going through the details of my case, reams of the evidence that I collected, I identified each person that conspired to silence and erase me and seal the evidence of criminal activity against the CIA. Conspirator number 1, Director of Central Intelligence, George Tenet. His felony was illegal use of the state secrets privilege, and his order to destroy a whistleblower, that would be me, and silence him, which he passed down to the CIA Inspector General's office. Next, Tenet's executive officer from Wall Street, Alvin Buzzy Krongard. Krongard's felony was targeting of a whistleblower, that would be me, lying about the use of a government credit card to eliminate me and my career. Buzzy Krongard also is under suspicion for suspicious transactions just before 9/11. That's in our book, just released, Twilight of the Shadow Government, How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State, which I wrote, submitted to the CIA. They sat on it. I knew they'd violate Executive Order 12356, as they did in From the Company of Shadows. So I released Twilight of the Shadow Government without the CIA's approval, so the world and the American public can see what the CIA is and exactly how they conduct criminal activity. All right, moving on. The chief of the CIA Inspector General, 2001 to 2002, was Rebecca Donegan, who was the one, because she was there during that time frame, that ordered her IG staff to target me and silence me and erase me so the activities, the skeletons buried in that base would not be revealed. Rebecca Donegan. Let's see. Also, Rebecca Donegan was involved in concealment and destruction of the official grievance that I submitted with all of the evidence of what the CIA had done on this base, including surveillance of U.S. citizens, on and on, break into the house. Actually, it wasn't a break-in, it was entry to the house because they had a master key, but I had them on a motion detector and a tape recorder. Okay, so that was the IG's role in specifically targeting a CIA officer for destruction. All right, the chief of the cover staff. I'm not going to say the exact division. The chief of the cover staff, I think anybody could probably Google that and find out what the division's name is. The chief of the cover staff, Chuck M., called me on the phone, and he was the one who threatened me to drop my investigation into the vulnerability in U.S. embassies, or it would be my career, and then hung up. His successor, Bill S., who was the one that the Department of State IG officially rebuked for covering up the vulnerability to our covert officers overseas and putting their lives at risk, and published to the entire intelligence community, Bill S. Now, ironically, as the case got hotter and I provided more evidence before they were able to seal it, The chief of base, Chris M., who is one of the primary conspirators in this, Chris M. called me up to the main building. He said, I want you to meet your new boss. So I walked up to the main building, and in walks Bill S., the one that sat there while I was present and was rebuked by senior Department of State IG officials for putting the lives of CIA agents at risk and covering it up for over 10 years. And this base was not even in the division that Bill S. worked in, completely different division of the agency. So they put the Fox over as my supervisor on this base, Bill S. They involved in destruction of evidence of the investigation documents, destruction of the investigative report, especially, which they did and worked with the chief of base, Chris M. They concealed contamination of the residents and the illnesses of me and my family, ordered me not to report any of our illnesses outside to headquarters or anywhere else. They blocked outside environmental testing. This would be Chris M. I had an environmental test company called Aztec set up to come in and do an objective environmental test on the house. It was all set up. Chris M. approved it. And we were relieved and thought we'd find out. The night before, I call Aztec Environmental, and they proceed to tell me, no, we're not coming tomorrow. Your chief just called us and said, cancel our study. We won't be doing it. So I went to Chris M. I said, what the heck happened? He said, well, we have our own environmental company that's going to come in and do an environmental test, which turned out to be a falsified test, which I proved through another expert. Anyway, the CIA blocked outside environmental testing and coordinated a false environmental test. The CIA lied to investigators. Chris M. specifically lied to investigators and claimed he ordered my wife and I not to use the government credit card for emergency evacuation. My wife and I were both there. We were both present. We were both witnesses. I demanded that he put that in writing. He refused twice, but we have two witnesses. Now, Base Commander Jason Shirley, who is the overt officer on the base, committed a felony, spying on U.S. citizens on domestic soil. Jason Shirley commanded his security guards to surveil our family on the base. One of the guards confided into us that Jason Shirley was in the woods surveilling our family with binoculars. Spying on U.S. citizens on domestic soil is a felony. Jason Shirley was also a conspirator in destroying evidence of the contamination of the residents. He attempted to stop investigation into a terrorist base penetration that I identified. He tried to stop the investigation from going forward. It was a clear attempt. Later turned over to the CIA Counterintelligence Center, who verified it was an attempt by a terrorist to penetrate the base. Commander Shirley also ordered the security guards, as I mentioned before, and I have affidavits of this, ordered the security guards to track the movements of our family wherever we went, when we left the base, when we came on the base, which is ironic because I was in charge of security over him for the entire facility. Director of the Office of Logistics, Bob D., was the one I sent the official grievance, detailed evidence in the official grievance to, and Bob D. blocked the official grievance and suppressed that evidence. And it's funny, when I walked into a CIA outer building to meet with the grievance officer, which turned out to be a sham, I just happened to go back in the mailroom and I saw the packet of the grievance that had just been sent by Bob D. to the grievance officer, unopened, sealed, no one had opened it. And apparently there was something in there for the grievance officer, probably, very possibly, the components of this conspiracy. Now, the chief of the Office of General Counsel, Mr. John Rizzo, felony, fabricating a false copy of an official grievance. Felony, lying to Congress and blocking a congressman from seeing the evidence. Felony, signed a court-ordered mediated settlement, then broke the settlement agreement. And with DOJ, the CIA's DOJ hitman, Glenn McTaggart, demanded a lower settlement and invocation of the state secrets privilege and sealing all the evidence against the CIA and threatening me and my family with prison. if we violated the state secrets privilege when it was invoked if we did not take a lower settlement. That, ladies and gentlemen, is bribery. Bribery is a felony. The Office of Security, Office of General Counsel Representative, I'll call him Jim A. Felony, conspiracy to silence a whistleblower and concealment of an official grievance and its evidence. Next, and this one is particularly egregious, the Deputy Director of the Office of Security, John T., a man with a violent temper. Felony, John T. concealed the grievance, the actual grievance document, and he retained it. Then John T. ordered 2 security officers to bring me in for an interrogation. They proceeded to pull out the actual grievance, which everybody else said they couldn't find. The 2 security officers, on the orders of John T., pulled out my actual grievance and then demanded that I recant it. Of course, I respectfully refused. Then they threatened me with a security investigation, which would essentially end my career if I didn't recant the document. Of course, I didn't recant the document. It was full of evidence. That was all ordered by the Deputy Director of Security, John T. Department of Justice, Johnny Sutton and his right arm man, Glenn McTaggart, felony with the CIOGC, blackmail demanding, which I've talked about, engaged in blackmail, demanding a lower settlement, or they would illegally invoke the state secrets privilege. And when we refused the lower settlement and told them that they needed to abide by the original legal document that they signed, indeed, they turned around and invoked the state secrets privilege, sealed all the evidence, and blocked it from the court. We went to appeal, and this is another part of the reform that I am recommending to the new administration. Judges, when a case comes from the CIA to an appeals court judge, federal appeals court judge, if it involves the state secrets privilege, the judges claiming that they don't have the expertise to weigh in automatically rubber stamp the state secrets privilege without seeing any of the case facts. The recent Chevron case has now requires now, Chevron being the evidentiary or the executive privilege evidence case, now says that the judge must hear the facts of the case. So that is a direct challenge to the illegal use of the state secrets privilege. So the CI with the OGC, along with the DOJ, engaged in blackmail, breaking a settlement, and then demanding a lower settlement, or they would invoke and seal the case. The chief of the Office of Medical Services, CIA, felony, performed a false environmental test of the house. I was there. My wife was there. We were witnesses. They left the doors and the windows open when they were testing the internal air. When I tried to close the windows, I have a degree in biology. You don't test indoor air with the doors and windows open. When I closed the doors and windows, they opened them back up and ordered me that I had no authority in this environmental test and to sit down. Then the OMS official sent to engage in this environmental test sat down to question us on tape. Or no, he sat down to question us, pulled out his little CIA notebook and said, I need to ask you some questions. My wife and I said, we'd be glad to answer any questions. We had a tape recorder there. I pushed the tape across the desk and said, will you do this on tape? The CIA OMS official's response was, I do not do interviews on tape. He closed up his notebook and walked out the door. In official cable traffic that I found, this OMS officer lied and said that he had asked questions of our family and we had answered and all issues were addressed and the situation was resolved. Lied in official cable traffic. The chief of Office of Medical Services engaged in both of those because ultimately the chief of OMS is responsible. The CEO of contract company Rava Kistner committed a felony by performing a fraudulent environmental test that would make it look like there was no contaminants in the house and that the CIA was not responsible. I had this proven by an industry expert from Dayspring Environmental. He was an expert witness in many cases of the cover-up of toxic exposure by American citizens. So Robert Kistner performed a false environmental test because they were making probably millions of dollars from the CIA. The chief of the Northwest Federal Credit Union, the CIA credit union, this is on tape. I have him admitting this on tape on patreon.com/Kevin_ship. You can listen to that. Where initially someone else above him had done this, he was shocked to find out that the approved hardship loans that had been approved by the board had been destroyed, and they had disappeared from their database. So in that case, yet he didn't know what they had just done until my phone call. I asked him, well, can you contact the loan officer that actually wrote the paperwork? And you'll hear this on tape. It's almost funny. His statement was, oh, she's gone. She is so gone. Well, where is she? Well, we really don't know where she is. So they literally hid away the officer that signed off on the hardship loan documents before they went to the board. The chief of the CIA Office of Personnel, her name is on this tape recording, contacted the Office of Personnel Management and ordered them not to disperse my thrift savings plan funds. Now, obviously, I needed those funds so my family could survive because we had lost our income, we lost our health insurance, and all that was intentional. They had raised all the interest rates on our credit union loans to make them unaffordable, and then threatened us with repossession of our cars. I mean, this was a multi-pronged conspiracy and attempt to destroy and silence specifically me. The chief of the CIA Office of Personnel Management, and name on the tape recording I just mentioned, ordered the this is CIA Office of Personnel Management, ordered the Government Office of Personnel Management outside the CIA to block these funds, thrift saving plans funds. That is a felony. The CIA committed a felony, and I have the Office of Personnel Management on tape admitting to that felony and mentioning the name of the person that ordered them not to disperse them. I called the Office of Personnel Management back. I advised the agent at OPM that withholding the thrift saving plan funds was a felony, and I had them in 7 days. All right, the chief of the Publication Classified Review Board, it used to be called the PRB, now it's called the PCRB, Publications Classified Review Board, violated Executive Order 12-356, Section 1.6, subparagraph A, which prohibits the CI from redacting information because it involves criminal activity, as I mentioned before, negligence, or embarrassment. And that's exactly what the PCRB did. Redacting evidence of the contaminated residence, the break-ins, the surveillance, destruction of the grievance, toxic exposure, surveillance of U.S. citizens, the names of my wife and children, the fraudulent environmental tests, tampering with official cable traffic, break-ins to the house, painting a chemical on the ceiling, blocking the thrift savings plan funds, and on and on and on and on it goes. This is what the PCRB redacted in my book, From the Company's Shadows. It is a felony. Next, the CIA Public Liaison Office. Felony, conspiring with the editor of the Washington Post. At the time, based on my search, the executive editor was Bob Woodward. To silence my story when I went to the Washington Post, the Post immediately went to the CIA and reported my contact and what I had said. And then the reporter called me back several times, attempting to get me to divulge classified information and entrap me with that. Of course, I didn't buy it. Contacted the New York Times, Charlie Savage. It was a big story. Charlie jumped on it and published it the next day in the New York Times. But even all the evidence Charlie wasn't aware of, he probably is now, especially with Twilight of the Shadow Government. So the prime federal conspiracy statute here that the CIA engaged in a conspiracy proves it is Title 18 USC subparagraph 371. Now, this is important. It states that a conspiracy occurs, as I mentioned earlier, that a conspiracy occurs when two or more people agree to commit a crime against the United States. And of course, the elements, two or more people agree to commit the crime to defraud the person, the agency, the individual, in our case, me, a CI officer, An overt act is committed to further the agreement of all these parties. Now, all the parties I just went through all acted together to destroy and silence my grievance with the evidence and then destroy me and my career. An overt act, as I mentioned, as it says, is committed to further the agreement. The maximum punishment for a conspiracy is 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. Wouldn't we all like to see these people held accountable in the CIA for once in our history? The statute of limitations for a federal conspiracy charge is 5 years, but it can be more complicated depending on the conspiracy. This is important. Conspiracies with an overt act, the statute of limitations begins when the last overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy is committed. An overt act can be any action from a phone call to a murder. A 5-year limitation here again. Conspiracies without an overt act, the statute of limitations begins when the conspiracy is abandoned, the conspirator withdraws, or the conspiracy goal is achieved. And here is the kicker. Continuing offenses. The statute of limitations for a conspiracy is considered a continuing offense, so it can only end if the conspiracy is withdrawn or its goal is achieved. So you can consider this case continuing. This is a continuing conspiracy. The CIA continues to cover this up. The CIA continues to try to silence me, as we all know, and this conspiracy continues. So there you have it. I have caught the CIA engaged in a criminal conspiracy, and I have listed all the conspirators that all work together in a full conspiracy to silence, after I exposed the vulnerability to our cover officers in embassies overseas, to silence that report, delete that report, prohibit that report, threaten my career, delete it from the headquarters server database, and cover up a potentially lethal vulnerability to our covert agents overseas. And as you've seen in my previous broadcast, my report was leaked to the Department of State Inspector General, senior officers who contacted me, went out and did a global study based on my report, and found out that it wasn't just as bad as I thought. It was worse. That anybody in the visa section of an embassy on an unclassified computer, that is any foreign intelligence service, terrorist organization, what have you, could go into the visa section to an unclassified computer and identify our CIA covert personnel, our chief of station, our case officers, and by extension, their assets, which could result in the assets execution. And the CIA covered that up. Hence, when the Department of State asked me to take no action because they were going to do a secret investigation outside of the CIA, wisely so, that the Department of State IG ordered me, don't say anything to the CIA about our investigation. We're going to do this investigation without the CIA's knowledge. Wait about 3 months. We'll be back from our overseas travel, going to several embassies, and then we'll give you a call, which they did. And that resulted in an official rebuke of Bill S., and who GS-15 officer, an official rebuke for putting the lives of CIA agents at risk, and covering it up for over 10 years. And then the conspiracy to silence me began. And I just listed all the parties and all the CIA officers involved. So they're busted. I want this on the record. I want what they did on the record, and I want who did it on the record. This is a federal conspiracy to its core, and it is a continuing conspiracy. So God bless you all for letting me go through all of that. I hope and pray that it will be a part of the CIA's reform, which is coming, and they know it's coming, and that's why we're starting to see fireworks. There will be attempts to keep Donald Trump out of office, especially by the CIA. So be praying for Donald Trump, Bobby Kennedy Jr., John Ratcliffe, Kash Patel, and the others, because they do not want them to come in and even find out a sliver of what the CIA has been doing since its inception and continues to do today. All right, that's it for today. I love you guys, and back with more later.